Hi, everyone. On the third panel of the day, as she mentioned, we'll get right into NFTs and the details that you're all super eager to hear. We have here people from RealFevr, which is a platform that deepens fan engagement by embracing that blockchain-based technology. The collectible football moments that they have to be sold, traded, and exchanged on their platform are collectible football moments with the aim of creating your own unique collection, and it's all backed by official intellectual property. On the panel of this revolutionary service for digital collectible cards are the CEO of RealFevr, Fred. We also have Nuno, who's an associate at the law firm Cuatrecasas, and Diogo, who is the CEO of Sport Multimedia. As Bethany mentioned, my name is Helena, and I hope to moderate the session in a way that gives you all detailed information, but also encouragement and enthusiasm, inspiration. Please send your questions through the platform. We want this to be as interactive as possible. So to start, we've already touched upon this, but maybe to warm up, Fred, could you please explain to the audience what is an NFT?
Yes, first of all, good afternoon. It's been really a marvelous and delicious session here in the last two panels, and I really think we will try to give our best possible knowledge and share with all the audience. But before I explain what is an NFT, let me just present myself really, really long story short. I started basically in the gaming industry back in 1996 when I had internet for the first time. And besides Quake and besides Counter-Strike, I've been also an hardcore player of World of Warcraft, and that's why I got in touch with Bitcoin back to October of 2010. We used to trade Bitcoin to gold inside World of Warcraft. The first NFTs that I bought were more or less a few days after the ERC 721 protocol was published. Lunar token, and also, of course, CryptoKitties, where everything started. So an NFT is basically a digital representation of something that is unique and is, of course, non-fungible. That means that you cannot stake unities that are similar, and you cannot divide one unity in a fungible way to decimals like a traditional currency. So with that said, there are multiple applications of a digital representation of something. It started, of course, with the idea of the CryptoKitties, digital cats that were represented inside a blockchain. And also, we could mate the kitties and create new kitties after each mating. That was, I think, the first really great use case. After that, the industry started to investigate more and more applications. And of course, the first one that popped out was connected to digital art. So by the concept, the person that paints a paint, with the traditional, in the traditional way, does not have, in fact, based in the subjective perspective of the art, does not have a direct relation between it is better or worse if I design something in Photoshop and I published online. And that's why, for example, Beeple sold in Christie's a paint, a digital paint, an NFT, for $68 million. Digital art, I think, was one of the best use cases in the last years. However, of course, when we speak about art, art does not need to be only a picture. Art is also a video. Cinema already told us that. And what we do today is in a very experimental way, trying to reach out more and more applications of this NFT concept. And I really think for the next 10 years, it will not be only in the private way, in private industry, but also in terms of government. A lot of other applications for the NFTs are still yet to be discovered.
Thank you. Can I ask you, regarding RealFevr, did you ever consider other options than NFTs? Is NFT the mandatory technological solution for
Mhm.
RealFevr?
Well, RealFevr started in 2015, completely dedicated to fantasy sports. So we were about to bring, a $16 billion business from United States of America to Europe and Asia. So fantasy sports are a fantastic business, especially in the way that we have designed it, and we reach around 1.2 million active users in our platforms today in App Store, Google Play, and also in a web environment. However, as a CEO, I'm always addicted to disruptive technologies, and since I always had this connection to blockchain and crypto, of course, we just had to find out the best possible moment to deploy a platform like this. And for me, since the very first beginning, I think there will be two different, two completely different NFT approaches. One, which is the pure and single digital asset. Another one is the digital asset connected to intellectual property in the material world, let's say. And that for me was always the challenge about how we can endorse and connect a piece of a digital asset with something that a government and law and legislations recognize as something that is in fact the intellectual property. So this was our challenge in RealFevr. I did not want to move forward and explore anything else but an NFT with intellectual property at the same time.
Mm-hmm. We'll go into intellectual property in a moment because we have a specialist Nuno here to discuss that. But let's first go to the perspective of rights holders. Diogo, could you please explain to the audience what is the role, the fundamental role of Sport Multimedia as a rights holder at RealFevr?
Uh, all right. Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Um, so basically, I would say just to explain what is our role, try to explain just very briefly what we have been doing and how do we get to this role. So basically, we have been a global sports rights agency for some time now, absolutely focused on digital content. We start dividing uh, broadcast rights from digital rights several years ago, maybe to 15, 20 years ago, when no one was doing it. We started dividing what was digital in one side, what was broadcast linear TV rights on the other side. So we came a long way on digital since then. So we went from clip distribution to mobile apps to mobile wallpapers to mobile messaging, mobile TV, then streaming. So we came a long way. So this is something like new in one way, but in the end, it's something that we have done in the past. So it's like a new technology, a new approach, digital content. Let's do it again, but I mean, with a different technology. So when RealFevr came with this new innovation, and Fred might explain that the roadmap is much more extensive than just like launching a marketplace. But as for the beginning, this is an NFT marketplace where we have the opportunity to sell video moments, NFT video moments, and then users to start to trade it. And so with this innovation in mind, we started with these two roles in here. One of them is, of course, we have a couple of rights. So the first one is that we have a couple of rights that we brought along with the project. Archive content, really perceived as historical content that was kind of lost, was kind of hanging over there but not being used, but actually with a lot of value for the final user, and that will be part of the first NFT drops. And so drop explained is a moment in our context, is a moment where you make the NFTs available to the user. So on the first rule, we have this couple of rights that we'll bring along to the market. On the second rule is we are here helping and partnership with a partnership with RealFevr to bring other rights holders on board, and hopefully taking us as a first and successful example. And based on that, we will definitely bring another rights holders on into the project.
Mm-hmm. So just to recap, so what RealFevr is selling, it is moments in football that in NFT format that are unique and that can be bought and collected. And the owner of these moments is Sport Multimedia. But the plan is to expand to other rights holders as well. So
Exactly.
based on your experience, what are the expectations of rights holders when they expand into this field? Because this is a new technology and people have a lot of questions and worries as well about how to adopt this technology.
Yeah. Um, I think we should have in mind that the typical right holder will know about NFTs. I would say like already for 2 years, 1 year, but very likely on the last few months. So it's possible that they have known about it like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, but most of it will only they got aware of it more recently. So let's say in the last months, as they start to hear about it, read about it, and so I would say that the expectations first, last, more subjective expectations would be they have to try this innovation, they have to try something new. There's like a new generation, a new public to address, not the typical OTT consumer, the typical traditional consumer of content like OTT or linear TV or social media. So it's like a new type of public. We would call it the investor type or collector type of public more than just like watching. So, and this is very cool. This is very cool. So these are the subjective expectations. Of course, we cannot forget like the most important, and is the one that you read more, and that's the one that you made the introduction, is about making profit. So there's these expectations on high profit, which might not be the case. So this would have to be done properly, because there are of course we can read about successful cases, but there are other cases that they were not successful at all. So basically we would like to, and that's what we are doing, we try to address this market with the right strategy and with the right processes to make it done properly and profitable, okay, with several
Hmm.
challenges to be tackled along the way.
Hmm. Absolutely. Guys in the audience, remember to send your questions. We're really happy to answer every and any one of them. I'm sure that this is very, very delicious as a topic to all of you listening. Um, then we'll go to Nuno and intellectual property. Um, so RealFevr states that these collectible moments are official intellectual property. How did you achieve this?
Well, actually, good afternoon, first of all, to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I think Diogo already addressed a big chunk on this subject, but I think it is important to add that a growing part of the economic value of sports as a whole is directly linked to intellectual property rights. So these rights relate to not only to copyright, but to commercial communications, to trademarks, to image and audiovisual rights. We are talking here about audiovisual rights. However, there is a great number of diverging views among stakeholders and national legislators as the form and scope of the protection to be granted to sports events as a whole and the transmissions of sports events. So the plurality of actors and business partners involved in this whole value chain of organizing and exploiting sports events, including the athletes, clubs, leagues, federations, sponsors, media, and the owners of the sports facility, further adds to the complexity of the legal issues raised within this subject. Well, this raises more legal issues and complexity than, for example, NBA Top Shots, where NBA centralizes every intellectual property right regarding their operation. So this being said, this little introduction being said, the intellectual property that we managed to guarantee for this sole operation was the legal rights on around 20 years of football matches from the Portuguese league that will be turned with a lot of creative work from RealFevr, with a lot of effort and design effort from RealFevr, what RealFevr called the moments. So these moments will be purchased by the users of the platform in the marketplace in the form of an NFT, a non-fungible token. Fred already explained what a non-fungible token is, but basically, when Bitcoin and blockchain first came up, one of the propositions of the technology was to make a digital token or a digital asset, something that could be scarce, that could have some scarcity, that could not be replicated by everyone. Everyone knows that we can copy paste a PDF as many times as we want. So Bitcoin tried to address that, and the blockchain technology tried to address this. And NFTs are just an evolution on what Bitcoin already was as a currency, as a form of currency, as a proposition of a currency, to be more exact. NFTs tried to replicate into blockchain that scarcity and that uniqueness. And here in RealFevr, what we tried to do from a legal point of view was to replicate that uniqueness based on what Diogo already said, on moments that Sports Multimedia had in their archives. So I'll address that a little bit later, but this was the main point that I wanted to mention. So these moments, they will be purchased by the users of the platform in a form of an NFT, where they can swap, sell, or give it away. I just might want to transfer my NFT from a wallet to my friend's wallet without any economic repercussion or any economic right associated with that. And only the moment that is contained in the NFT is being acquired. All the rights remain with the right holders. So there is a lot of regulatory ambiguity in relation to cases where NFTs are used for the sale of, for example, artworks and other copyright protected creations. Therefore, the transfer of ownership of the works reflected or transposed into an NFT that stay in the blockchain ultimately depend on the agreement between the parties in their total free will within civil law.
Yeah, you actually already touched upon this. How do you tackle the different jurisdictions? You talked about NBA and Top Shot. So, because that is a big challenge when you're planning on a global service.
Yeah, exactly. Nowadays it's very hard because we have no case law, we have no specific legislation regarding NFTs or what. Even the legal definition of a digital asset, we are lacking a lot on those type of things, and for a lawyer, it's very hard to talk about these kind of topics on that way because we are used to pick up some specific law and work on that, on case law, to understand how can we interpret a specific disposition, a specific law, a specific regulation. So we must differentiate two things here in terms of territorial scope from a legal perspective. So the nature of the tokens and the NFTs and the marketplace itself. So we made a very thorough analysis and we found several answers for questions such as, is the token a security within the European legal definition or the American, the United States definition? To which countries can we sell the NFTs? Which regulatory obligations we have to address to make this work? But as I said before, this is a very barren land yet to be worked and discovered from a legal point of view. So we have no case law to clearly support a specific path within a compliance and regulatory point of view. However, we at Cuatrecasas have been building a lot of experience in similar projects, in a close contact with regulators to do the right compliance. And I think we have been able to give RealFevr the ease of mind that they expect. from the lawyers on that side.
Yes. There's a couple of questions that we have now from the audience. Maybe this is now continuing regarding the IP. Maybe this will be for Nuno. Rob is asking, how are you managing the IP rights related to retired players? Who owns the rights? Is it the club or the athlete or the broadcaster?
Yeah, actually, typically, players signed contracts with the clubs that will eventually have to be worked out in the new contracts for the future. I think Diogo could also shed some light in these topics of intellectual property, because he has a lot of background on that from an economical, commercial point of view. But typically, clubs sign with the players. In their contracts, it's a clause that the players give their rights, their image rights to the club, and the club can dispose of them as they want in most of times. There are a lot of questions regarding private moments of the player, not as a player itself, but in his private life, that are not within the scope of what we are dealing. But a player as a performer of a sports, usually they have their rights, their IP rights licensed or controlled or managed by the clubs themselves.
Yeah.
Sorry, Diogo. I just wanted to add this. In terms of case law in Europe, it has been defined that a football match, it's not a creative work. It's not like a play. It's not like a movie. It's not like the painting. So the football match itself doesn't have any intellectual property associated with that, with the performance for itself. What has intellectual property rights and copyrights associated with it is the directive, the direction that the broadcaster puts into the event. So the choice of cameras, the addition of the event itself, that's what it's being protected here from that point of view.
And Diogo, did you want to say something else?
Yes, no, I was just adding that typically, I would say more advanced competitions, now they gather under their umbrella the rights themselves. So this is the case of NBA, let's say. This is the case of many of football competitions and the UEFA and the FIFA model. So they gather all the rights under the organization. Some competitions are still on the way to have it organized that way, so rights are still on the clubs, but normally it's never a player's. So the player signed, they play for a certain competition, for a certain team or for a certain competition, and all the footage and everything belongs to a third party, but not the player. Another thing would be, as Nuno was mentioning, like private moments, of course, filmed by himself doing something else, of course. Hopefully we still own those moments as being ours and everyone else, but since you are paid and play and doing your job for an organization, which is the case of the players, so this footage belongs to someone else. But I think that's even just for me, just to add this on these rights and the new challenge that we are facing here, and as the rights holder, and this is the message for the rights holders, is that one thing, I think this footage is clarified. It's not the hardest thing. I mean, it's a right that belongs to someone that can be sold. It's not, I wouldn't say that is the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge is that this type of rights were used to be traded in other forms, just like with geographic boundaries, with season boundaries. So you would sell for a certain country, for a certain season, for a certain platform, with a certain time frames, with some embargoes. Let's say, okay, after 6 months you cannot show the content. You can only show it live. You can only show it delayed, but 24 hours after the match, and a lot of lengthy footage, so a lot of quantity of footage. And the new rights and this new challenge is different. Is like it has no geographic boundaries. It's much less content. It doesn't have any time frame, so it's perpetual. It's something that you give someone who's buying it, and you own it, and it's yours, and it's done. It will always be yours. So these are some of the challenges that we faced because we are rights holders, and everyone that we are talking to, we are trying to help them how to perceive this new area.
Definitely an interesting topic and not an easy one to solve. And maybe this what you've gone through is a good lesson to anyone listening and considering this, creating this kind of a platform or joining an existing platform, is that this is never clear cut, and you do need an expert to advise you on this.
Let me just enter here, Alina. Sorry, just to complement what Diogo and Nuno have said. I think for those who are getting in touch with this NFT concept for the first time, the best way to explain this is very, very simple. We don't need to complicate. In fact, we're just reinventing the way that we can sell a DVD. So, in fact, when we issue a DVD in the past, the right holder used to issue the DVD, and the DVD was copyrighted for personal use, could not replicate, distribute, public or broadcast, or anything else. So you used to buy the DVD stays with you forever, that content stays with you forever, and it is yours, right? If you want to sell it in a secondary market like eBay, you used to do it, and you are still doing that, right? And as long as that content has more and more time, if it is really, really good, it generates even more and more value. So the way that we are dealing with this is like someone has the ownership of the rights, someone issues to RealFevr a license to produce the NFTs, and the NFTs goes to the end user more or less in the same way that a DVD used to go. So for those who are, just to simplify the perspective, we are just reinventing the way that the DVD is distributed.
Yeah, exactly. And in the form of NFTs, what we are doing here is to sell a single edition DVD. Just that person, just one person will be the owner of a specific DVD. Or let me say in another way, for a specific content in that DVD.
Yeah, exactly.
The only thing that the person can do is to watch that specific moment in a DVD forever. The times that the time that he wants to, how many times that he wants to see the DVD, but he cannot replicate the content. He cannot make T-shirts from that moment and sell them. He cannot reuse the moment for other commercial purposes. The only thing that an NFT owner can do as a collector is to say, I'm the legit owner of this specific moment in the form of an NFT. Please check me out, guys. I was the first one in the entire world. For the collector perspective, this is very important. If someone is a collector in the audience, they will understand this type of this way of thinking regarding a collection or a collectible. But basically, that is it. So making the linkage between traditional IP and NFTs. So when we consider intellectual property implications of an NFT, we must distinguish the ownership of the NFT and the ownership of the underlying intellectual property. So what Diogo and Fred were trying to say is that we are just selling the moment. The ownership of that moment itself will always belong to the right holder.
Yeah, and also let me complement something about, we did not speak that much about the business model, but before we move to that, let me also say one thing, a very conceptual thing. When we work with disruptive technologies and we work in innovation, we don't know everything. It's impossible to know it because nobody in the past have done it, right? So in this situation, we have, a very good use case in the United States that I am personally a big fan, but there are a lot of improvements that are still yet to be discovered. And when we work with this kind of technologies, we have to have the proper mindset that we will need to test it, we will need to micro test it, and we will need to have a completely full approach, with all the stakeholders involved this, that we go for the discovering adventure. Of course, in RealFevr, we try to do our best to have as much compliance as possible, and that's why Nuno is here, because Cuatrecasas is one of the biggest law firms in Europe, and one of the biggest in Spain, especially. So we try to do our best to interpret the law, but the truth is, the law is from the 80s, eventually from the 90s. Digital world did not even exist back in that time. So what we must do, and this is not something related only with blockchain industry or the NFT product, it is related with everything that pops out in a disruptive perspective. I can give you two very good examples that we all know. Airbnb, when appeared, there was no legislation, so everybody started to put houses in the market, and renting them, and it was working. Then legislation came in. If you take a look at Uber, it was exactly the same. Taxis are already in the market, and then everybody has a car and starts to rent a car, taking people in the car, and then regulation comes in. So the same thing that happens most of the time with disruptive technologies and innovation is exactly the same things that we are facing out right now with the NFTs. However, what we do is we try to protect ourselves as best as possible. But as the CEO of RealFevr, I will never stop innovation because of there is no law. So what I do is I discuss with the lawyers, I discuss with the right holders, I participate in conferences like this one to understand even questions that we did not figure out before, and we brainstorm about it and we move forward, because innovation is all about time to market, go to market strategy. And if you wait, if you lose time, someone will do it before you, and they will conquer that new space that was there to be conquered. But those who were afraid to do it were just waiting, and they will not be the first comers, they will not be the first ones to do it. And in RealFevr, in a scale up company like RealFevr, it's like we try to do our best to comply with all the legislation, but we are very, very good in the ability to execute. And we deliver content, we deliver product, and we move forward. And that's what we try to do. So legislations are very, very important, but product deliver and innovation, for me, as a CEO of RealFevr, is much more important.
Right, actually, talking about innovation, there is a question coming from Sandy, and he would like to know what happens if the RealFever platform goes bust. If something happens and all of a sudden your DVD player doesn't work and there's
Mhm.
no more DVD players anywhere in the world, what does the collectible card owner, the moment owner, what do they get?
That is a very nice question with a very simple answer. The asset remains in the blockchain. The governance, when you think about the decentralized perspective and you use a decentralized platform, the asset belongs to the network. So even if RealFevr disappear, the asset will remain forever in the blockchain, and it is impossible to erase it, to delete it, or whatsoever. That is the trade-off when you work with blockchain. You cannot delete content or data from there.
Hmm. And then you wanted to go to the business model, Fred. Was there something specific you had in mind?
Yeah, of course. I think besides the regulatory framework that we all agree that we need in the future to build up, and of course, I hope RealFevr will be part of that to create the path for the newcomers, especially here in Europe. Um, I think the really important thing about the NFTs is the demand that the market has. So people want to buy them, people want to use them. And the way that we explore this, and it's not new, but it is really the way that should work, we sell packs. Packs have been in our memory for more than 200 years, right? So we sell packs, we open the packs, you have the NFTs. Pretty much very simple, something that we had in the past in a tangible asset. So with blockchain, what we do is to create intangible assets which have exactly the same value or even more because of two reasons. Because the traditional packs, you had limitations about who could buy it and who could trade it. So you used to have a local store, you used to go to that local store, buy the packs, open the packs, and then you will trade it with your friends, family, or connected friends, let's say. However, with blockchain technology, we can scale these sales globally to the whole planet and reach much more people. So we just expand globally our total addressable market. And that's where the secret of the blockchain technology is, because we can distribute content globally and we can make sure that that content is protected by a decentralized network. So regarding to the business model, of course, there are multiple revenue streams. I would say the three most important ones. The first one is the sale of the packs, of course. The second one are two different ones in the marketplace. First one, the transaction fees that each person pays to trade an NFT. And the second one is a perpetual royalty. Perpetual royalty is a very, very important concept that only blockchain technology can endorse to a product like this. Why? Because in the past, with a DVD, the right holder used to sell a DVD. He used to collect the money from the first sale, but if the DVD is going to be sell in eBay for 100 times, 1,000 times on eBay, in fact, the right holder, the one who owns the intellectual property, will not get any share from that sale, that secondary sale. When you use blockchain technology, we guarantee to the right holder that he's going to get forever a perpetual royalty every time the NFT is traded. Forever. And nobody can touch it. And who manages it? Blockchain governance. And who controls it? The smart contract that we code and operates automatically. And that's why really the intrinsic value of the whole technology apply it to this concept. So the right holder is forever protected. It's immutable. We cannot change the rules. We can change the rules each drop, but once the drop goes to market and is printed on chain, there is no way that we can change the rules. So we can adapt, we can change the rules drop after drop, but once that drop is on chain, there is nothing we can do about it. We cannot change it. So the right holder is protected, the end user is protected, and the marketplace is protected. And that's exactly the trustless approach that blockchain technology brings to this kind of commercial models.
So the transactions utilize the blockchain and the end product, the product itself
Mhm.
utilizes the blockchain. But you have also utilized blockchain in a way in your equity structure because you have issued a token, the Fever token.
Mhm.
Could you explain to the audience what that is?
Yes, the Fever token works more or less like credits that you can have to interact with the Fever ecosystem. So, as Diogo said, the idea of the NFTs for me is not only to print an NFT, sell it, and trade it. We want to take the NFTs to the next level, and I really think that the utility of the NFT is the most important thing. So, I believe that there is intrinsic value in the NFT just by himself. However, if we integrate the NFTs in a gamification process inside a fantasy league, we give an utility to the NFT that people can play and interact with it. So fantasy sports are fantastic for fun engagement, but the NFTs, I think, it were one of the missing pieces in the fantasy sports, to increase the revenue generation and to increase the fun engagement, to becoming more super cool and fun to the users to have much more challenges. So the FIFA is basically the token that gives you access to this whole ecosystem, and also it will give you access to the token leagues that you can play with your friends with tokens and use the NFTs to be part of it. So basically what we are building, it has a roadmap for the next months, for the next years, of course, but The first piece are, of course, the NFT specs. After that, the NFTs marketplace. After that, the NFTs integration with the fantasy leagues. And after that, the token leagues. So Fever is basically, the utility of the Fever token is really to be the fuel of the RealFevr ecosystem.
Exactly. And there's a lot of jargon in this, but basically there are different types of tokens, and some of them are considered assets, and some of them are considered utility tokens that are only assets in a certain ecosystem. We're quickly running out of time. We're supposed to finish up in 2 minutes. I know that you have nice plans for the future. Now, of course, what we discussed with Diogo is that you'll expand to other rights holders, but then perhaps you'll also expand beyond football to other sports.
Of course, talent is everywhere related to sports. So when you think about RealFevr, our approach in the market is very simple: is to become the Amazon of NFTs, of videos connected to sports, always backed by intellectual property. So this is our vision, our main goal. And of course, multiple sports have a lot of things to explore. For example, esports are just a fantastic and natural asset to become an NFT because everything exists in the digital world. The audience is young because the old audience, of course, they need to shift their mindset somehow, and sometimes it's hard to understand. But in the esports scene, for example, it's completely natural to have everything in a digital approach. So, and for me as a gamer, of course, esports I would love to explore as soon as possible. But besides esports, there are a lot of other sports that they have a really huge digital traction, and as long as a sport has a digital traction, it can be a very good partner for RealFevr, and to start work out a product.
Absolutely. Sounds very good. I think we will wrap this up here, and I hope that everybody stays on for the networking. Thank you, gentlemen. It has been a real pleasure to have these discussions with you, and thank you, iSport Connect, and the entire community. This is definitely the way to go forward, and I hope that you really are left inspired.